Welcome back. In 2003, I traveled to Cuba for the Miami Herald. I met a lot of people, but the one who made a lasting impression was Osvaldo Paya. He spoke out on behalf of the Cuban people, and because of it, the Cuban government had him killed in 2012. I remember during my trip to Havana, sitting in his home in La Serra, as he talked about his dreams that the Cuban people could enjoy greater freedom. When I met with him, his daughter, Rosa Maria, was 15. She now carries on her father's work. I spoke to her earlier this week. Give me your impression of what exactly is taking place in Cuba right now.
From Sunday, July 11, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of Cubans went into the streets demanding freedom, demanding the end of the dictatorship, and that there is the best news that the Cuban people have had in 62 years. It's the result of many efforts, but it's also a very organic and a spontaneous expression of the people being fed up and demanding the change that we as a nation need. Other face of this coin is that the Cuban regime have been brutal with the repression. They shot with real bullets to the unarmed protesters. There have been deaths, there have been injuries, there have been thousands of persons that have been detained and disappeared.
For those who don't follow Cuba as closely as so many of us do here in Miami, explain how extraordinary that moment is that you have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets. That is not something we've seen.
We as a nation, we understand that to get out of the deep crisis in which we are right now, we need to end the dictatorship. Cubans are demanding that change, and we have been demanding that change for years now, but now the situation is just not sustainable anymore for the people or for the regime. Cubans, we are fed up and we are demanding the change to take place right now.
Do you believe that the food shortages, do you believe that the COVID crisis, the people who are not able to get treatment in hospitals, do you believe that contributed to the moment that we're seeing now?
I think that all those factors are catalytics of the situation, of course. But the Cuban people have been very clear in the streets, and the demand is freedom. Because with freedom, we could have medicines. With freedom, we could produce food. With freedom, we could produce buildings. With freedoms, we could have a life. The only obstacle there is the dictatorship, and that's why the Cuban people is being so clear in demanding the end of the dictatorship.
So many people here in Miami and South Florida help loved ones in Cuba. They provide remittances. They provide, when they travel to Cuba, when they were able to travel to Cuba, they bring with them material that helps their family members. You still have family members in Cuba. Is it a mistake for Cuban Americans to continue to send help to their loved ones in Cuba?
No, the mistake would be to send that support to the Cuban regime. The mistake would be to allow the Cuban military to capture those remittances, which is actually what they are trying to do. In the moment that the military interfere in the process of supporting the Cuban people, in that moment, all that support goes directly to the regime, which is the same thing to say goes directly to the machinery of repression against the Cuban people. So yes, of course, that the Cuban people needs support and needs help, but that support have to go first and foremost with the most needed demand, which is the demand for freedom and the demand for the end of the dictatorship, and the rest have to go directly to the Cuban people, bypassing and preventing that the Cuban regime profit on that.
I know that the issues of Cuba, in talking to your father, I remember this from years back, he steadfastly believed that Cuba needed to be resolved by Cubans in Cuba, that the issues that you're dealing with in Cuba cannot be fixed from Miami or from Washington, that it's the Cuban people that have to lead on this. Do you agree with that?
Totally, and that's the case right now. It's the Cuban people. The people that is in the streets is the Cuban people. And I have to say something, Jim. The Cuban people live inside and live outside the island. The Cuban nation have been forced into exile too. And that's why so many Cubans around the globe are chanting in the streets that if Cuba is in the streets, we are in the streets too. And that's beautiful, and it's also needed because the protagonist role of the change in Cuba relies on the Cuban people, and the Cuban people we are assuming that role at the highest possible cost, which is life in the streets, in the island. But we also need the support of the international community. Make no mistake, these murderers in power, they have the weapons, and they are using those weapons against unarmed citizens in the streets. So the international community needs to take action to support those citizens in their demand for freedom, and also to stop the impunity of the repression of the Cuban regime.
Your father was often vilified, was often attacked in Miami because of the way he tried to go about fostering change in Cuba. Many of the people that you stand with today were some of those voices that criticized him then. Does that make you at all uncomfortable?
So of course that we have had our differences, but this is a moment of unity, and that unity is demanding the end of the dictatorship and the freedom for the Cuban people. And any Cuban that decide to make that demand and to assume that cause is my brother, is my sister, and we are together in this.
This week, Rosa Maria met with White House officials and continues to pressure the Biden administration to do more to support the Cuban people. We'll be right back.